Good afternoon and welcome to Bull Market Stock Show. This is your host, Rian Option, and we're doing two big things today, which is the story of the Evergrande that is basically defaulted. Finally, the bastards actually defaulted, and that is actually creating a bit of havoc into the market. I saw actually, basically, I'm seeing here oil prices are actually crude oil, actually specifically, is actually down by 1%. Brent is also down by 1%. Then you have gold is actually slightly on the back foot on 0.25%. And then you have also the dollar that performing actually quite well during the circumstances. But there's two things actually that push the dollar. Is one is that CPI number of tomorrow. That looks like it's going to be one hell of a number tomorrow. It's expected to be at around about 6.9. It could be about 7%, the CPI number in the United States tomorrow, because previously it was at 6.2%. And I do expect actually quite a bigger number, especially for tomorrow when that CPI number is released. And that has to do with a lot of various things in the United States. There's a lot of confusion that's basically going on. In normal circumstances, you have in economics, you have a good labor market. If you have a good labor market and wages, then normally increases, and then afterwards you will have a good inflation. Now that is the cycle of good inflation in any economy. But in the United States, if you look at that NFP number on Friday, and you expect actually numbers to come out of inflation tomorrow, you would assume because of that NFP number that was bad, you would assume that that will actually maybe push inflation numbers down. But that is not the case if you look at the unemployment numbers of the United States. I'm a bit concerned on basically on inflation number tomorrow and also Evergrande. The thing is, I need to do actually the inflation number today because obviously I'll be on at 4 o'clock tomorrow, and then that will be a bit too late because then I will miss actually giving you my forecast of what it's going down tomorrow. But please, don't forget to subscribe actually for my YouTube page, and also please drop your comments and questions, especially when you look at the Evergrande situation and also the story in the United States when it comes to the inflation number that will be out tomorrow at 3:30 South African time. But I will start with the inflation number, and then I will go to the Evergrande situation, which they defaulted actually on their debt repayments, and that news was actually out. And look, the Chinese market didn't react as in yet, but definitely we're going to see a reaction tomorrow morning, and that might push up the dollar even further. But let's start with the inflation news actually of the United States. Now, there is actually expectation for inflation tomorrow. If I can just share my screen with you. There is actually expectation for inflation tomorrow. It's at 6.2. 6.2. That was the previous number. The expectations for inflation tomorrow is about 6.9%. This is core inflation in the United States. That's at 3 o'clock, 3:30. That is expected at 4.9%. Now that is core inflation, and this number here, CPI, is expected at 6.9%. That is the forecast. This is consensus at 6.8%. Now, according to the Federal Reserve, they actually reduced the number, they reduced the slogan, which was saying it's transitory, because they believe it's no longer transitory. It is actually persistent. So as I said in previous podcasts, these guys actually totally messed up. It is actually a policy mistake what the Federal Reserve did. Well, they went on with transitory. Inflation is not transitory. It is there. It is sticky. So they will actually now move in a different direction, maybe stop tapering or actually lift up the interest rates, or basically both. Now, the thing is, that is the expectations coming from tomorrow. And you can see also the dollar is already starting to rise. Actually, currently, it's actually performing very well against Australia, New Zealand, the euro, basically against anything. Also, it's actually squashing the commodities. Now, that is all to do with tomorrow's expectations for the inflation number, and on top of that, the Evergrande situation that is actually currently happening. Now, what do I expect about inflation tomorrow? I expect actually a massive number of inflation for the United States tomorrow. And there are certain things that really bothers me, especially when you look at United States and actually across the world. Now, if you look yesterday, the job openings came out, and in the United States tomorrow, there was about 11 million jobs available for the United 11 million. people just don't want to work in the United States. Now, obviously, there's various amounts of reasons, and that is all to do, one with a big one, that was the pandemic. Everybody was chilling at home and don't want to go back to work. And then on top of that, you had the vaccine mandates. And then people were like, you know what, I just quit. It's fine, I'm just leaving. Those things have consequences, and it's severe consequences that the United States government and governments across the world will actually have to face. Or I will not say the governments, because they will face nothing. The people that will face the situation is actually your ordinary citizens, and that has to do with high inflation. Now, if people quit their jobs in droves, which is currently happening in the United States, then it means that you can't have productivity. Goods don't get to the shelves. On top of that, goods can't get delivered at your house. Production is slow in companies, and that normally leads to higher inflation. There's always consequences with every decision that you make. Now, there is certain, even, which for me was funny, even in Nigeria, the public servants there, they also have to do with the vaccine mandatory situation. And the Nigerians is basically pissed off, especially in the public sector. Well, someone is leaving a comment, want to become a famous. Okay, I don't want to become famous. So people in Nigeria is also pissed regarding this whole situation, and that has to do with the vaccine mandate. I will just actually play a clip for you regarding the whole story in Nigeria.
Mixed reactions have continued to throw the recent announcement by the authorities in Nigeria over mandatory COVID-19 vaccination. Many say the rule is uncivil and unacceptable. Some civil servants in the capital, Abuja, say they have been stopped 2 to 3 times from entering into their workplaces in December 1st and will not mind staying at home if it continues.
I don't care about affecting my salary. That is why I say if they enforce it, I'm happy to go. But they should pay my money instantly and there will be no problem.
Well, it's a very good decision taken. But the moment, the nature of human beings is when you push them into doing things, they actually kind of revolt. So I would prefer a more friendly approach.
That is actually a very good answer from the guy at the end of that clip. But I like actually the guy that was talking previously. He was actually stating that that people must pay him instantly. But that is a situation when you get when you force people to do stuff, and then you get that reaction. You will always get reaction from people. Now, what has that to do with the inflation number? The inflation number that I think that will happen tomorrow, it will be a bumper, and that will push up the US dollar even more, because then the Federal Reserve need to act. And when the Federal Reserve need to act, that is where interest rates will go up with aggression. Now, I'm just actually also showing you this. This is actually, they call it here straight, the labor shortage in the United States. This is the amount of job openings that are there. It skyrockets to basically to all-time highs. It's actually at 11 million. It's sitting there at 9.5, and it pushed, if you look at yesterday, it was actually at 11 million. Yeah, they actually stated here, massive labor shortages. People just don't want to work. That is actually a huge problem. When you have massive labor shortages, it means there's production problems that go on. People are quitting their jobs, well, for vaccine mandates or whatever reason they're quitting their jobs for. That create actually a huge problem for productivity. And that is what is a huge concern, because that can lead to all sorts of things. Because one, the people are basically at home, and that is what that guy said from Nigeria. It's also that the thing is that people normally revolt when these things happen. So basically, what I expect from inflation tomorrow out of the United States, you will get the inflation of about 7.2%. That is what I forecast for the United States for tomorrow. And then the Reserve Bank of the United States, or the Federal Reserve, then will act, or the market will anticipate that already, that the Federal Reserve will act with more aggression. That is now to stop tapering and also lift up the interest rates now to squash the inflation down. So I do expect that inflation will start to inflation will increase further, and the United States will actually need to lift up the interest rates. The consequences of that is for a different day, because that could lead to other problems. The labor shortage is actually a concern in the United States because of their vaccine mandate policy. that was vetoed by President Biden, and that is actually where the consequences is actually moving. It's a long story to turn the whole vaccine mandate problem back, and it will not be an overnight story because the president has veto power in the United States, and that is, as it seems, the president of the United States has veto power when it comes to the vaccinatory mandate. I'm just actually going to show you another clip.
Tonight, growing backlash over President Biden's vaccine mandate. At least 19 Republican governors denouncing the rule, requiring businesses with at least 100 employees to make COVID shots mandatory or offer weekly testing.
The president's actions in a mandate hardens the resistance.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis promising a fight.
People should not be cast aside because they make a medical decision for themselves.
President Biden calling opposition cavalier, adding all federal workers and contractors should be vaccinated within 75 days or face fines.
The requirements for vaccination are part of a long tradition that we have in this country of taking steps as a collective to keep people safe.
But fallout underway. In New York, the mandate forcing one hospital to turn away expectant mothers after staff members quit.
The number of resignations received leaves us no choice but to pause delivering babies at Lewis County General Hospital.
In North Carolina, business owner Stephen Bullock feels stuck.
It's a fight every day.
The vaccination rate of his 125 employees about 40%. Now he fears some quitting to work somewhere smaller where the mandate doesn't apply.
Have you found anything that is capable of changing someone's mind at this point?
Frankly, I have not. Folks are really dug in, and it seems the harder you try, the further they go.
And yet major corporations in favor. Companies like Amazon, Home Depot, and Walmart say they welcome the plan. The hope, drive down U.S. COVID cases as they start to plateau. Infections now down 10% from their peak during the latest wave driven by the Delta variant. Doctors say there are three main reasons why. Increased use of masks indoors, a steady rise in vaccination rates, and the virus burns through until there's no one else to infect.
Only thing is there's consequences on that. I fully understand the whole story that you need to have COVID cases down. That is understandable. But what the thing is, what will you get if you force things onto people? Because also you have this situation, which is also in the United States. Last week, you have the non-farm payrolls numbers that came out. That was now a 4.2%. That was the unemployment rate of the United States. It seems low, but it's a lie. This thing shows, what it actually does is that people are actually quitting their jobs. That's why this unemployment number is so low, and that's why this number is in the red, which is the non-farmers payrolls number, because the jobs is not, the jobs is there, but people are not applying for the jobs. Now, the consequences of that could lead to other problems, where it leads to a revolt or something, but something bad will normally happen in these situations because people just don't want to work. And also on the other part is that inflation will definitely start to rise, which will later on leads to higher interest rates because of inflation. And that for me is what will push the inflation number up tomorrow. Is one is the shortage of labor that is there, which they can't do their jobs because that will push up prices. And when prices are pushing up, that is where you will get a stronger dollar for tomorrow. That is what I think, and that's why the dollar is actually performing well now, because the consequences of government actions is leading to this situation. Where this bad, look, the main thing is for us is to make money out of the situation. The problem is on the ground, it can lead to other situations which nobody has basically control over. Now, what I hope for basically for tomorrow is that the dollar is actually becoming strong tomorrow due to the inflation number, which I expected about 7.2%. And the other thing is the Evergrande situation. Now, will the Chinese authorities step in? Because honestly speaking, these guys were lying for a very long time when it gets to the situation of Evergrande. They kept quiet, they didn't push the alarms, nothing at all, and now we're sitting with a 300, now the world is sitting with a $300 billion a debt default, which is actually now coming from Evergrande. The thing is, what was said is that when I post this, or I made a podcast of this the last time, the actual Facebook actually said that I was spreading misinformation. Look, how the hell can I spread misinformation where I actually wrote a book about this collapse of the property market in China? That was actually in 2017 when I published the book, but I was spreading misinformation regarding China. It just shows you how crap Facebook is with their bloody fact checkers of what they're having. But anyway, so the Chinese basically, or the Chinese Evergrande is actually a default. And there's also another company that defaulted also with China. And that is where the property market is totally finished in China. Now, how will the market react in China? I think the commodities for today will keep on sliding because of the news that came out of China. On top of that, the Chinese market, that is now the equity market in China, how will that perform tomorrow morning? I think that will be in the red. And then you will have currencies like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, which is normally very vulnerable. It can also be the South African rand. Those currencies are very vulnerable to this nonsense out of China. So that will push them down, because the thing is that a lot of iron ore get exported from South Africa and Australia to actually China to build all these 600 billion to build all these buildings in China, whatever Evergrande is building, and that will basically come to a halt because of the property developers that is just defaulting in China. Now, China was literally bullshitting the world for a very long time. And as I said the last time in 2017, that this thing will burst, and will burst ugly. The results of this will be enormous, and it will affect a lot of countries across the world, especially with the equity markets, and also when it gets to the currencies. The problem is that these people are owing suppliers, a lot of suppliers. They build about, apparently there's about 1.5 million houses that stand, that people paid for, prepaid these houses, and it's not done. That there's about 800 projects that they need to complete. That is just standing, it is not even complete. People lost millions and millions of rand. Those people that bought these fake houses that is not being built, a lot of people built these houses, and now it just stands there because the company will default and the houses will not get finished. And that is a situation that is currently in China when it gets to the Evergrande. On top of that, Evergrande also built a soccer stadium in China, which is also not finished. That is also the nonsense that were actually happening with Evergrande. These guys went on a rampage when they're collecting debt. They didn't control it at all, and now they're sitting with this big problem that they have. The Chinese authorities did not step in, so they left it for these guys to collapse. And as I said the last time, this is China's Lehman Brothers, and Facebook was saying I was actually misleading the people, which was absolutely nonsense. Now we're seeing it's true. They did default, and the consequence of this will be severe. What I would say, you must get ready for the sell button. One is the equities like your Dow Jones, your NASDAQ. I will not say much the NASDAQ, but the Dow Jones, also the JSE companies, especially your commodity companies, they will definitely go down. And then you have Australia, Canada, the oil prices, the New Zealand dollar. Those currencies normally will also go down because of this whole situation of Evergrande. And then on top of that, you have a blistering inflation for tomorrow, which can actually go up quite heavily. I expect a 7.2 number for tomorrow for inflation due to the labor shortage that is there, because labor shortage always leads to higher prices, and higher prices leads to higher inflation, and that needs and that will take action from the Reserve Bank of the United States Federal Reserve to act aggressively. So I think the market will start to buy the dollar starting tomorrow if that inflation number is going on further. The problem is there's nothing that we can do about it. One thing that we can do is actually make a shitload of money out of what is happening tomorrow. That is now with the inflation number that will be out. That is actually at 3:30. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube page. And please, you can drop your comments afterwards. I will answer them. I will see what I can do, what I will answer them regarding the questions for tomorrow. So I will see you guys tomorrow at 4 o'clock, same time, with some information regarding the inflation news for tomorrow. That's it from my side. See you guys tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye.